If you're ready for a story where humans redefine fear itself, make sure to hit like, drop a comment on what you think would happen next, and subscribe so you don't miss the chaos that follows. Trust me, you won't want to blink. The Galactic Empire never underestimated anything twice. At least, that was their reputation. A civilization spanning 100 systems, with fleets the size of moons and armies that could swallow worlds, it had become the definition of unchallenged power. And yet, it had just made its gravest mistake. It had chosen to see Earth as a problem that could be solved with numbers. 10,000 assassins, elite killers from the farthest reaches of the galaxy, were dispatched to eliminate a species the Empire considered primitive and predictable. They arrived on Earth's frontier colony with confidence as thick as their weapons and arrogance sharper than the phase blades they carried. Imperial sensors scanned the planet, expecting resistance patterns, defensive structures, perhaps even a few low-tech militias. They found none of these. Instead, deep within the sprawling forests and jagged canyons, 2 human signatures emerged. That was it. The Empire's communications officer froze as the readings solidified on the holographic map. One was tagged with a designation that sounded like myth itself, Reaper. The other carried a single enigmatic word, Ninja. No fleets, no battalions, no army. Just 2 men and enough reputation to terrify a galaxy. Elias Vorn, the Reaper, made his way through the jungle with deliberate steps. He carried no haste, no idle chatter. His armor was heavy, a dark monolith that absorbed light, and the scythe he wielded was as much a part of him as the calculated calm that marked his every movement. He had walked through extinction zones, planetary sieges, and assassination fields where entire squads disappeared overnight, and yet each time he emerged carrying the weight of survival and inevitability in his eyes. To see him was to know that death could arrive politely and still be final. Kenji Ryo the ninja moved differently. Shadows bent around him. Leaves fell in slow motion as he slipped past them. Even the wind seemed to hesitate as if it dared not betray his passage. Cybernetic enhancements rendered him nearly invisible to sensors and human perception alike, but the faint hum of tension followed him. He spoke rarely, never more than necessary, and each word that escaped was sharpened to a razor's edge. Where Elias announced himself, Kenji erased the world, leaving nothing but questions and fear in his wake. Together they were a contradiction. One inevitable, one unseen, both unstoppable. The Empire's assassins had already begun their approach. Thousands of alien soldiers with psychic weapons, cloaking fields, and advanced combat systems descended upon the planet, confident in their overwhelming advantage. Their plan was simple: hunt, eliminate, and report victory. They did not anticipate fear. They did not anticipate cunning. They certainly did not anticipate legends walking among them. The first patrol sent into the frontier vanished within hours. No signals, no bodies, no trace beyond the faint impression of terror imprinted into the environment itself. Sensors detected motion, then silence. Reaper's scythe had passed through like a rumor of doom, and Kenji's blades had touched targets never seen, leaving nothing but the faintest suggestion of mortality behind. The humans on the planet watched from the shadows, distant and safe as the Empire's might descended. Colonies braced for invasion, but their anxiety was tempered with an unspoken hope that the stories were true. That somewhere out there humans had not only survived but learned to bend death to their will. Word spread across the planet of the 2 figures who walked into danger as if it were a stage, who turned ambush into theater, who let fear do their work while leaving devastation precise and contained. Every survivor who returned spoke the same words, though their voices shook. We did not fight them, we only saw them, and it was enough. Elias paused at the edge of a canyon where the first wave of assassins had been expected. His scythe traced a slow arc through the air, slicing anticipation itself into something tangible. He did not rush, he never did. Each movement carried authority. Every step was an announcement that the Empire had misjudged its opponent. Behind him, Kenji scaled the opposite cliff, invisible, leaving no footprint but a cold, unsettling certainty that the world had already changed. They were not soldiers in a conventional sense. They were the embodiment of every legend the galaxy whispered about but few believed. Humans who turned scarcity into strategy, fear into weaponry, precision into inevitability. As the Empire's command center calculated losses, disbelief spread. 10,000 assassins. Elite. Trained beyond imagination. And yet, the planet's response was 2 men. 2 silhouettes moving through the wilderness with absolute purpose, each strike measured, each disappearance amplifying their legend. Panic began to ripple among the ranks. Orders were sent, reinforced, repeated. Communication loops broke under the strain of fear the humans inspired. Something inside the Empire, a part of it that prided itself on rationality, began to question the calculus that had seemed so foolproof. Numbers, it seemed, were meaningless against legends. Elias stopped and looked skyward as a patrol attempted orbital reconnaissance. He did not fire. He did not even flinch. His presence alone, a promise of inevitability, was enough. Kenji, somewhere in the shadows, ensured that every system, every sensor, every observer misread the situation. The Empire's confidence cracked like ice under a summer sun. For all their training, their fleets, their psychics and weapons, they faced an opponent who played by rules that had never been written. Rules that they could not anticipate, cannot predict, and perhaps cannot survive. The sun dipped behind the jagged mountains, casting long shadows over the jungle. The two humans moved as one, silent and deliberate, leaving behind the faint echo of destiny. The Empire's assassins were coming in waves, certain of victory, unaware that the definition of fear had just changed. Somewhere deep in the Galactic Council someone whispered, "Perhaps Earth is not what we thought. Perhaps humans are not to be underestimated." By the time anyone realized the truth, it might be too late. And that is when the Reaper smiled, not out of joy but because the game had only just begun. Kenji's blade, unseen, hummed a quiet warning across the night air. The Empire had brought 10,000 assassins. Earth had sent 2. And the forest, the jungle, the world itself, would bear witness to what that meant. The first reports came in as flickers of panic across the Imperial network. Entire strike teams were vanishing without trace. The Empire expected resistance, but not the calculated precision that now unfolded across the frontier. Elias Vorn had chosen the terrain to his advantage. The canyons, jagged and dark, funneled the assassins into predictable paths. Every movement of theirs was anticipated, every weapon countered. He did not rush. He simply became the inevitability they had failed to recognize. When the first squad emerged, confident in numbers and training, Elias swung his scythe once, a clean, elegant arc that ended 10 lives before the survivors could comprehend what had struck them. The air seemed to pause, trembling in reverence to the silent statement he had made. Death, when announced, did not roar. It whispered, precise and cold. Kenji Ryo was elsewhere, weaving through shadows that seemed to respond to him like obedient servants. He infiltrated the enemy's forward observation post, a structure bristling with sensors and psychic amplifiers designed to detect life long before it appeared. By the time anyone noticed the disturbance, the place had been dismantled from the inside. Alarms screamed across the network, but they were hollow. Every crew member who had been present vanished, leaving only the faint trace of human ingenuity. Kenji moved silently, leaving no mark, no sound, only the invisible signature of fear spreading faster than any weapon. When he finally emerged, the Empire would be left to wonder if he had ever been there at all. Elias paused at the edge of a ravine, observing the movements of an approaching battalion. He did not speak, did not signal, did not betray even the faintest emotion. Yet the soldiers hesitated, sensing the aura of inevitability that clung to him. He stepped forward deliberately, each footfall a declaration, and the battalion faltered. Psychic assassins screamed as their senses betrayed them, every mental probe rebounding against an invisible wall of discipline and experience. When the Reaper struck, it was swift, surgical, and terrifying in its elegance. He left survivors only to amplify the legend, the story that would spread faster than any fleet could respond. Meanwhile, Kenji had found his mark, the central command node for the forward battalion. Moving with meticulous precision, he sabotaged the systems, replacing security protocols with corrupted loops that would turn friend against friend. In minutes, chaos unfolded without a single shot fired. Assassins turned on one another, mistrust corroding their discipline, paranoia eroding their focus. It was a war waged not with bullets or blades but with understanding, exploiting the cracks in arrogance and hubris that no training could repair. Reports filtered back to the Imperial Council, fragmented and panicked. 10,000 assassins were deployed to obliterate a world. Now they were reduced to fragments, scattered and afraid. Commanders struggled to comprehend what had gone wrong, their calculations failing against variables they could not measure. Human ingenuity, human patience, human fear turned into a weapon. Everywhere the pattern was the same. Elias struck openly, a specter of unstoppable lethality. Kenji struck unseen, leaving only confusion and dread. They were not soldiers. They were a symphony of inevitability, playing notes no machine could counter. As night fell over the frontier colony, the two humans moved in tandem without meeting. Elias left markers in the aftermath of his strikes. Corpses arranged with deliberate symmetry, their placement a silent message to those who followed. Kenji manipulated technology, warping the enemy's perception, turning every shadow into a threat, every sensor into a whisper of doom. The Empire had anticipated humans who fought, but it had not anticipated humans who could rewrite the rules of engagement entirely. In the heart of the jungle, a squad of assassins advanced cautiously, their psychic scanners screaming with static and unease. One of them, a veteran trained to anticipate death itself, froze when his senses reported a presence that could not be measured. He fell first, pierced by an invisible blade before he could even process the attack. Around him the others panicked, their cohesion unraveling. Elias waited for them to falter, letting fear guide their movements into traps of his design. Each confrontation was over in minutes, yet the psychological impact rippled outward, infecting squads that had not even seen the fight. Kenji had begun to weave the final threads of his silent influence. He hacked communications, intercepted reports, and fed misinformation back to command. Messages that should have provided clarity now only deepened confusion. Reports of squads disappearing, sightings of ghostly figures, impossible descriptions that defied reason. Assassins began to question reality itself. If 10,000 elite killers could be bested by 2 humans, then the ground beneath them was no longer trustworthy, the air no longer safe, the shadows no longer neutral. Fear had become the battlefield. By dawn, only fragments of the initial force remained intact. Orders came in frantic bursts: regroup, reinforce, retreat. But the patterns had been set and the humans had already moved on. Elias and Kenji were always elsewhere, preparing for the next encounter with the same calm precision that had defined every moment so far. There was no bravado, no flourish, no recklessness. Just efficiency, patience, and the quiet certainty that the Empire had miscalculated in the most fundamental way possible. It had assumed humans could be intimidated by numbers. In the central command hub of the Empire's forward operations, advisors whispered, their voices trembling. 10,000 assassins were deployed. Now they were reduced to shadows of that force, scattered and broken. One officer dared to suggest negotiation, another spoke of withdrawal. But the higher councils refused to admit error. The Empire had sent its best, and failure was not a word in their lexicon. Yet even as they spoke, every sensor, every psychic readout, every attempt to anticipate the humans ended in uncertainty. Fear had taken root in ways no strategy could anticipate. Elias paused on a ridge overlooking a valley filled with retreating assassins, his scythe catching the first rays of sunlight. He did not smile, did not celebrate, did not gloat. Victory was not his goal, precision was. Control was. The Empire had brought 10,000 killers to Earth, expecting annihilation. Instead, it had received a lesson in patience, ingenuity, and human unpredictability. Somewhere in the shadows, Kenji observed the same retreat from a cliffside, unseen and silent, his presence a constant reminder that numbers were meaningless when strategy and instinct converged. As the day ended, the first true realization spread through the Empire's ranks. Humanity was not to be measured in terms of soldiers or technology. Humanity was a force that could bend inevitability itself. And on this frontier world, the Reaper and the Ninja were writing the opening lines of a story the galaxy would never forget. The Empire's losses had become impossible to ignore. Thousands of elite assassins had vanished or turned on one another, and every report that returned was more fragmented than the last. Commanders struggled to rebuild their formations, desperate to restore order, but the humans were already moving again, faster than calculations could predict. Elias Vorn traversed a narrow canyon at dawn, his scythe catching the faint glint of morning light. The air was still, save for the whisper of his boots against rock. Each step he took carved a path of inevitability through the enemy's strategy. He did not hunt, he choreographed. The assassins would find themselves trapped not by chance, but by design, every maneuver preordained by a mind that saw patterns where the Empire saw chaos. Kenji Ryo had infiltrated the orbital relay stations. From his vantage point, entire communications grids and sensor networks could be rewritten or disabled in minutes. He moved like a shadow among shadows, dismantling security protocols, redirecting patrols and corrupting reconnaissance data. To the Empire, it seemed as if the planet itself conspired against them. Assassins reported sightings of figures that could not exist, heard voices that spoke in impossible tones, and encountered traps that were never physically present. Kenji had turned the environment into a weapon, using fear as a precision tool. Elias encountered a squad of psychic assassins in the valley below. They had prepared, believing themselves ready for a Reaper-style confrontation. Their weapons were advanced, their senses augmented, and their training unparalleled. Yet Elias's presence warped the battlefield. He moved slowly, deliberately, forcing them to act on instinct, to commit to decisions they had not fully reasoned. One by one the assassins fell, not to brute force alone but to the illusion of inevitability. When the last one raised a weapon, Elias's scythe traced a single arc. Silence followed. Survivors fled, carrying with them the story that humans did not merely fight, they defined the rules of engagement before the fight began. Meanwhile, Kenji intercepted a fleet of supply drones meant to reinforce the front lines. In an invisible ballet, he redirected their coordinates into natural hazards, turned the drones against one another, and ensured the remaining assassins would be isolated. Each action was silent, precise, and devastating. To the Empire, it appeared that the humans anticipated every step, every contingency, every weakness. By the time patrols realized their supply chains had failed, Elias and Kenji had already reshaped the battlefield entirely. Rumors began to spread among the assassins. Whispers of a reaper whose scythe carved inevitability into existence and a ninja who moved unseen, manipulating the very fabric of their operations. Fear became contagious. Units broke apart before engagements, preemptively striking one another in confusion. The Empire's strongest psychic assassins reported presence anomalies that defied analysis. Their every calculation ended in chaos. Humanity, it seemed, had weaponized something beyond skill or technology, perception itself. Elias and Kenji never moved together, yet their actions intertwined as if guided by the same hand. Where Elias left bodies, Kenji left systems crippled. Where Elias struck fear in open confrontation, Kenji spread it invisibly, creating uncertainty in every step. The assassins, once confident in their training and superiority, now questioned the very ground beneath them, the shadows around them, the reality of the humans they had been sent to destroy. One squad surrendered after days of pursuit, not in combat, but out of sheer terror, unable to reconcile the patternless pattern of their defeats. The Empire scrambled to adapt. New tactics, reinforcements, psychic amplifiers, and orbital surveillance were deployed, yet each initiative failed before it could take effect. Elias's encounters grew bolder. He faced squads multiple times larger than those before, yet he remained methodical, controlled, almost ceremonious. Each strike was calculated not only to eliminate but to teach. He left survivors alive long enough to witness the futility of their mission, to etch the legend of the Reaper into memory. Kenji's presence remained undetectable, but its influence was omnipresent. Surveillance systems misreported attacks, patrols stumbled into hazards that were never there, and the assassins began to doubt whether any strategy could succeed against a species that understood fear better than they did. At the heart of the conflict, the two humans paused briefly, separated by miles of alien terrain yet connected by purpose. Neither needed orders, instinct and understanding guided them. Elias's calm observation of the battlefield complemented Kenji's silent manipulations. Together, though apart, they reshaped the entire campaign. What the Empire had assumed was a matter of numbers became a question of inevitability. Humanity had turned asymmetry into art, precision into a weapon, and the sheer unpredictability of two individuals into a force that could rival 10,000 assassins. By evening, the survivors among the Empire's forces were fragmented, demoralized, and desperate. Command directives could no longer reach units, communications were corrupted, and fear had become a palpable enemy. Entire regions of the planet had been cleared of hostile presence without a single conventional battle, and the assassins no longer knew where to strike, whom to trust, or what was real. Each encounter reinforced a growing realization: Earth had sent not soldiers but legends. Elias observed the retreating figures from a high ridge. He did not rejoice, did not taunt, did not accelerate the slaughter. Precision required patience. The Empire had underestimated humanity's ability to turn calculation against itself, to weaponize discipline and perception into an unstoppable force. Kenji, unseen on the opposite side of the battlefield, ensured the pathways of retreat remained guided, shaping fear and confusion with invisible hands. Both men understood the same truth: the Empire's response was collapsing, and every moment they waited, the lesson would embed itself deeper. As night fell, the humans moved away from the battlefield, leaving the Empire to reckon with losses it could barely quantify. The Reaper and the Ninja had not merely fought, they had rewritten the rules of engagement, demonstrating that human ingenuity was not measured in numbers but in mastery. The surviving assassins would carry the story forward, spreading it among their fleets and systems. A single day had become a turning point. The Empire had sent 10,000 assassins to destroy a world. Earth had responded with 2 men who could outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast them all. And as the stars above the frontier colony shone, silent witnesses to the chaos below, a single thought crystallized in the minds of every Imperial commander still capable of reflection. Humanity was not only unpredictable, it was unstoppable. The war, such as it was, had only just begun, but the message had already been delivered. The remaining assassins had regrouped in a fortress carved from black stone and alien alloy, perched atop the cliffs where the jungle gave way to jagged peaks. They believed themselves safe, believing the Reaper and the Ninja were mere specters, confined to rumor and fear. Yet Elias Vorn approached with the inevitability of a storm. Each step through the narrow pass was deliberate, measured, and perfectly timed. He did not need numbers. His presence alone bent the battlefield, forcing the enemy to move exactly as he wished. The assassins could sense it, though they could not name it, an aura of predestination that made every strategy feel inadequate. Kenji Ryo had already infiltrated the fortress's outer systems, slipping past locks and grids that were supposed to be unbreachable. He moved like a shadow folded into the architecture itself, leaving behind corrupted circuits and false alarms that eroded trust. The soldiers inside could see nothing, hear nothing, feel nothing, yet every sensor they relied on betrayed them, every calculation misled, every decision a step closer to collapse. The ninja had turned technology into theater, a stage upon which fear became tangible and impossible to counter. Elias reached the main entrance as a squad attempted to engage him. He did not dodge or sprint. He simply advanced. Their attacks were precise, their discipline flawless, or so they believed, but he was the equation they could not solve. His scythe carved arcs through the air that disrupted balance, disarmed enemies, and shattered morale. Each strike was clean, almost clinical, a display of inevitability that left the survivors alive only to witness the futility of resistance. Panic spread through the fortress as the sounds of psychic screams and clashing metal echoed. Even the most experienced assassins felt themselves unraveling, their minds straining against the invisible force of human precision. In the command chamber, the leader of the assassins, a figure of fear in his own right, tried to coordinate a counterattack. Messages bounced back corrupted, reinforcements never arrived, and every command seemed to play into the human's hands. Kenji had anticipated every move before it was made. One by one, the assassin sensors began to misreport positions, allies turned on each other, and psychic amplifiers overloaded under the stress of contradictory signals. What was meant to be a final bastion of control had become a labyrinth of confusion, shaped entirely by 2 humans who were never where they were expected. Elias paused to observe. He did not speak, did not hurry, but every motion sent a message. The Empire had misjudged humans entirely. Soldiers fled, only to fall into traps prearranged in the terrain itself. The Reaper's strikes were both lesson and judgment. He left survivors alive to carry the truth forward, to etch fear into the Empire's memory, to ensure that every story of resistance spread as vividly as the scars they bore. Kenji moved silently among corridors, using the fortress itself as a weapon. Doors locked and unlocked, lights flickered. Alarms rang and ceased without explanation. Enemy squads, once confident in their coordination, turned on one another in paranoia. Some fled to dead ends, some attacked allies they believed compromised the mission. By the time they recognized the disruption, Kenji had already passed through, leaving them to unravel. The ninja's work was invisible but undeniable, shaping the fortress into an instrument of psychological warfare more devastating than any physical assault. Outside, the Empire's remaining forces attempted a coordinated strike from the surrounding cliffs. Elias engaged them with methodical lethality, drawing attention while Kenji orchestrated chaos from within. The humans had mastered asymmetry. Numbers no longer mattered. Initiative, perception, and precision had become the new measure of strength. Every maneuver by the assassins played into the human strategy. The fortress, designed to be impregnable, became a stage for a performance that demonstrated humanity's understanding of fear, patience, and inevitability. The assassin leader, desperate and unflinching, finally confronted Elias. Weapons clashed, psychic pulses collided, and yet the Reaper remained calm, each motion deliberate and fatal. Every attack was anticipated, every defensive move neutralized. He did not rage or boast. He simply existed as the embodiment of calculated inevitability. Around them, the fortress fell apart, not from destruction alone, but from fear made tangible, strategy undone by understanding, confidence eroded by human patience. Meanwhile, Kenji prepared the final threads of his influence. Communications were hijacked, escape routes blocked, and enemy units isolated. The assassins' coordination had become impossible. Every command sent back corrupted, every reinforcement misdirected. The fortress's own systems turned against its occupants, a silent, invisible hand guiding the humans' will. Where the Empire believed technology gave them control, the ninja had turned it into a weapon against them, invisible yet absolute. By nightfall, the fortress was effectively neutralized. Only a fraction of the original forces remained, their discipline fractured, their confidence shattered. The humans had not only survived, they had dominated. The Reaper and the ninja had demonstrated that intelligence, patience, and precise execution outweighed sheer numbers and overwhelming firepower. The Empire's best assassins, feared across the galaxy, were reduced to shadows of themselves, unable to anticipate the humans' next move. Elias and Kenji finally paused outside the fortress, separated by distance yet united in purpose. They had not sought glory, nor conquest, nor vengeance. They had executed their mission with discipline and understanding. The Empire had underestimated the humans, and the consequences were irreversible. For the first time, a branch of the Empire questioned the invincibility it had taken for granted for millennia. As the stars reflected off the fortress's shattered spires, Elias spoke softly, a ritual more than conversation. The Empire had sent 10,000 assassins to destroy a world. Earth had sent 2 humans who understood inevitability, precision, and fear. Somewhere, the remaining soldiers would carry the lesson forward, spread the story, and ensure that the galaxy never misjudged humanity again. The night was silent, but the warning had been delivered. The Empire's greatest soldiers had learned that numbers meant nothing against mastery, that arrogance was a liability, and that the Reaper and the Ninja had already redefined the cost of underestimating humans. And though no one on the planet could yet predict what would come next, one truth was undeniable. The final act of this confrontation had begun, and it would leave an indelible mark on every mind that dared to oppose them. The remnants of the Empire's assassins were scattered across the jagged terrain, their coordination shattered, their confidence obliterated. The Reaper and the Ninja had already turned every advantage against them, yet the final confrontation awaited. Elias Vorn stood at the edge of a cratered plateau, his scythe balanced across his shoulders, the setting sun glinting off its blade. His calm was absolute, the kind born of countless campaigns, of worlds lost and won, of silence observed and understood. Death followed him not as a servant, but as a companion, patient and precise. He did not need to fight to prove dominance. His presence alone reshaped the battlefield. Kenji Ryo emerged from the shadows of the cliffs above, his form almost imperceptible even to the trained eye. Every movement was economy perfected, every step calculated, every glance purposeful. Unlike Elias, he never announced himself. He let fear and uncertainty do the work, letting the assassins unravel under the weight of their own expectations. Together, though separated by distance, they were a single instrument of inevitability, the Reaper embodying confrontation, the Ninja mastery of stealth and manipulation. The Empire soldiers did not know where to strike, how to react, or even if they were truly alive. The final stronghold of the assassins rose ahead, a compound carved into the cliffside, bristling with energy shields, psychic amplifiers, and automated defense turrets. The enemy leader, a veteran of planetary exterminations, awaited within, confident that strategy and numbers would finally overwhelm the humans. He had underestimated them from the start. Confidence had blinded him, arrogance had become his undoing. Elias observed the approach, each movement deliberate, each breath measured. The Reaper did not fear death. He had studied it, practiced it, and now wielded it with an artistry that no assassin could counter. Kenji had already infiltrated the compound's outer perimeter. He bypassed locks, rerouted power grids, and manipulated the internal sensors. Alarms screamed, but no one could trace their origin. The soldiers inside scrambled, uncertain whether threats were real or imagined. Each decision they made played directly into the humans' plan, every misstep a step toward their undoing. Kenji did not need to strike. The environment itself had become a weapon under his guidance. Fear, confusion, and anticipation were as lethal as any blade. Elias advanced openly, drawing the attention of the lead forces. He fought with a rhythm that was both brutal and poetic, his scythe carving through enemy ranks, leaving a wake of controlled devastation. Each swing was precise, each movement a study in efficiency and inevitability. Survivors fled only to encounter traps he had anticipated, each escape path preordained to ensure chaos. Elias did not gloat, did not taunt. He simply existed as the embodiment of the lesson the Empire had failed to learn. Humans could turn inevitability itself into a weapon. Inside the compound, Kenji moved silently, neutralizing the enemy leader's aids and corrupting critical systems. Energy barriers fluctuated, turrets misfired, and psychic amplifiers overloaded. The leader of the assassins realized too late that his control had been shattered. Every calculation, every contingency, every protocol had been anticipated and undermined. Kenji's unseen presence had turned the fortress into a labyrinth where the enemy could not distinguish reality from illusion. The ninja's artistry was invisible but absolute. The final clash occurred at the heart of the compound. Elias confronted the leader directly. Blades met, psychic energy clashed, and the ground seemed to quake beneath the intensity of their duel. Elias remained unyielding, every motion measured, every counter precise. He did not rage, he did not shout. He executed inevitability. The leader, despite skill and training, could not match the Reaper's understanding of timing, patience, and psychological mastery. Each strike Elias landed was a statement. The Empire's arrogance had blinded them, and humans were not measured by numbers or technology but by mastery of perception and action. Kenji ensured that no escape or reinforcement could intervene. His manipulation of the compound systems, the battlefield, and the enemy's perception created a perfect funnel. Every assassin who had survived until this moment was either neutralized by misdirection or incapacitated by fear and confusion. Kenji did not need to strike directly. His presence alone reshaped the outcome, guiding the Reaper's confrontation to its inevitable conclusion. Elias delivered the final strike with calm precision. The enemy leader fell, not in panic, not in chaos, but as if acknowledging the lesson he had failed to learn. Elias did not celebrate. His task was not revenge or glory, it was fulfillment, the execution of strategy perfected through experience. Kenji emerged from the shadows to observe the aftermath. Together they surveyed the battlefield. The Empire's might had been broken not by numbers, not by technology, but by understanding, patience, and human mastery of fear itself. The surviving assassins, few in number, surrendered, their arrogance replaced by awe and terror. Messages were sent back to the Empire describing what had occurred, each word reinforcing the same truth. Earth had sent not soldiers, but humans who transcended expectation, who turned fear, skill, and patience into instruments of dominance. For the first time, a branch of the Empire truly questioned its invincibility. Elias and Kenji did not linger to bask in victory. They moved silently away from the compound, leaving survivors to carry the story forward, ensuring that the Empire would never underestimate humanity again. Their bond, forged through action and understanding rather than words, was unspoken but complete. One relied on visibility and force, the other relied on invisibility and manipulation. Together, they had demonstrated that human ingenuity could redefine conflict itself. As the stars rose above the frontier colony, reflecting off the ruins of the fortress and the bodies left behind, a single truth crystallized across the galaxy. The Reaper and the Ninja had not merely survived, they had rewritten the rules of engagement. The Empire's 10,000 assassins had been undone by two humans who understood strategy, fear, and inevitability better than anyone had imagined possible. The Reaper glanced at the horizon, the weight of countless battles in his eyes. Kenji, hidden among shadows, acknowledged the same understanding. No fanfare, no words of triumph, only the quiet satisfaction of precision fulfilled. The lesson had been delivered and the galaxy would remember it. Humanity did not wage conventional war. Humanity ended arguments. And on that night, under alien stars, two humans vanished into legend, leaving behind a world forever changed and an empire forced to reconsider every assumption it had ever held. The story of the Reaper and the Ninja would spread through fleets and colonies alike, a warning, a testament, and a promise. Never underestimate humans, for they are patient, precise, and unstoppable.